It was the year of our Lord 1500, a time of salt-crusted maps and the scent of distant spice. In our timeline, this was the year Pedro Álvares Cabral, a Portuguese nobleman, was blown off course and stumbled upon the shores of Brazil. But in this other world, the year had dawned with a different kind of uncertainty. For 8 years, the rumors of a Genoese sailor named Cristobal Colon had faded to whispers. His claims of a western route to the Indies, of islands populated by strange, gentle peoples and rumored gold, had been dismissed as the fevered imaginings of a madman. His small fleet, the Niña, Pinta, and Santa Maria, had returned in 1493, not to a hero's welcome, but to indifference. The Spanish court, weary from the Reconquista and more focused on consolidating power in Europe, saw no profit in Colon's vague reports of a land with no grand cities or accessible gold. The Indians he brought back were seen as curiosities, not as subjects for a new empire. His maps were crude, his journals lacked the meticulous detail of a true cartographer, and his grand promises rang hollow. He was given a small pension and quietly retired, his discovery a footnote in the royal ledgers, soon forgotten. This silence was the most profound event in the history of the world. Spain, without the easy wealth of the Americas, never rose to its apex as a dominant global power. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, instead of funding grand armadas, poured their resources into wars with France and a burgeoning trade empire in North Africa. Their focus remained on the Old World, and the vast, untamed continent across the Atlantic remained a ghost, a rumor of a distant storm. In the absence of a Spanish juggernaut, the world map began to redraw itself. Portugal, already masters of the African coastal trade, found its ambitions reignited. Without the distraction of a Western rival, they meticulously worked their way south and east. João, a cartographer's apprentice in Lisbon, heard the stories not of a madman's islands, but of the fertile lands of Guinea and the fabled kingdoms of the Congo. His fascination lay not with the New World, but with the perfection of the known one. He spent his days in the royal archives, poring over the logs of Vasco da Gama and Cabral, his fingers tracing the coast of Africa, the route to India a well-worn path in his mind. It was Cabral's second voyage to India, in 1502, that changed everything. A violent storm, even more powerful than the one that had nudged him toward Brazil in our timeline, drove his fleet far off course. He found himself on a vast, unfamiliar coast, a land of emerald jungles and crimson soil. It was here, in this fertile, beautiful land, that he found not small, scattered tribes, but a highly organized and expansive society. The Tupinamba people, with their intricate villages and sophisticated farming practices, met the Portuguese not with fear, but with cautious curiosity. Cabral, a seasoned trader and not a zealous conqueror, saw an opportunity for commerce. He exchanged simple iron tools and fabrics for precious hardwoods, vibrant bird feathers, and a new, strange root vegetable that the locals called manioc. The encounter was tentative and driven by trade, not conquest. Portugal established a few small, well-guarded trading posts along the coast, more like the ones they had in Africa than the burgeoning colonies Spain would have built. The diseases, the devastating plagues that followed in the wake of full-scale European contact, were contained, spreading slowly and with less ferocity, giving the Tupinamba time to adapt and resist. The massive influx of people and pathogens that would have undone them was reduced to a trickle. Meanwhile, in the Valley of Mexico, the grand city of Tenochtitlan thrived, a gleaming jewel on Lake Texcoco. The Aztec Empire, or the Triple Alliance as it was truly known, was at the height of its power. The great city bustled with over 200,000 souls. Itzcoatl, a young noble training to be a priest, walked through the Tlatelolco market, the air thick with the scents of roasted maize, pungent chilies, and the sweet aroma of flowers. He saw no ominous omens, no signs of a coming doom. The world was ordered and secure. The Aztecs expanded their influence, not through a single, brutal conquest, but through a series of tactical alliances and tribute agreements. They were, in this timeline, a powerful and stable regional force. The Incan Empire, far to the south, was also untouched by the winds of change. The Sapa Inca, Huayna Capac, oversaw the expansion of his empire, building an intricate network of roads and communication runners that stretched from the high Andes to the Pacific coast. Ilari, a gifted stonemason, worked on a new temple in Cusco, his hands shaping the perfectly cut stones that fit together without mortar. Her people were thriving. The potato, a staple of their diet, was an unrivaled crop, and their advanced agricultural techniques fed millions. The devastating civil war between Huáscar and Atahualpa never happened, for in our world, it was the arrival of Pizarro and the knowledge of a small, vulnerable force that sparked the conflict. Here, with no such threat, the two brothers worked together to consolidate power and govern a unified, powerful realm. Across the Atlantic, a different kind of ambition was stirring. England and France, seeing Portugal's slow but steady wealth from its African and now Brazilian trade, began to cast their gaze westward. The stories of a northern passage to the Pacific became a new obsession. English fishermen, long a presence on the Newfoundland Grand Banks, pushed farther west, seeking new fishing grounds. In 1521, a small, English vessel captained by a man named Arthur Drake, seeking to escape a storm, was driven ashore on a new, massive coastline. Drake, a practical man, didn't claim a new empire for the crown. He claimed a new source of cod. He found no gold, no great cities, only vast forests and a few scattered settlements of people who called themselves the Wampanoag. The exchange was simple. Drake traded iron knives and hooks for salted fish and beaver pelts. This was the beginning of English and French involvement in the Americas, not as grand conquerors, but as opportunistic traders. They established a series of small, fortified trading posts along the coast, their primary purpose to exploit the rich fur trade. The Columbian Exchange, as we know it, was not an event, but a slow, deliberate trickle. Maize and potatoes, instead of radically altering European diets in a single generation, were introduced slowly, first as curiosities in botanical gardens, then as niche crops. Their full potential was realized over decades, not years. Similarly, diseases like smallpox and measles spread gradually, not as a sudden and lethal wave. The indigenous populations, with more time to adapt and develop some resistance, did not face the same apocalyptic population collapse. The great cities of the Americas were wounded, but not annihilated. The Aztecs still lived in Tenochtitlan, and the Incas still ruled from Cusco, their societies evolving, not crumbling. The lack of an American treasure trove fundamentally altered the European power dynamics. Without the flood of silver from Potosi, Spain remained a powerful but not overwhelming force in Europe. The Spanish Armada, in this world, was still a formidable fleet, but it was not the overwhelming force that threatened England. The wars of religion in the 16th and 17th centuries were fought between a more balanced set of powers. The Habsburgs' dream of a pan-European empire, without the limitless silver to fund it, withered. England and Portugal, through their measured, trade-focused engagement with the new lands, grew in stature. Portugal's wealth was still tied to its African and Asian trade routes, but its new outpost in Terra do Brasil added a new, consistent revenue stream. England's control over the North American fur trade made it a formidable naval power. By the 18th century, the Americas were a very different place. The indigenous civilizations had not been wiped away. The Aztec Empire, though influenced by Portuguese and French trade, still held sway over much of Central America. They were a powerful trading partner, not a subjugated people. The Incan Empire, with its vast network of roads, had successfully repelled several attempts by a more aggressive French presence to expand inland from the Pacific coast. The French learned that the vast, high Andes were a natural fortress. The native people of North America, having faced a century of gradual, trade-based interaction, had formed their own confederacies and alliances with the European trading powers, playing the French and English against each other to their own advantage. The Western Hemisphere was a patchwork of nations, powerful indigenous empires, independent nations, and a scattering of smaller, well-defended European trading posts. Christianity had not swept across the continent with the sword. Indigenous religions and traditions had remained dominant, their practices and beliefs mixing with European ideas in a more complex and gradual cultural exchange. This was the world without the discovery of 1492. It was a world of more nations, more cultures, and more paths taken. There were still wars and greed and suffering, but the grand, sweeping narrative of European conquest had been replaced by a more nuanced, and perhaps, more just, history. It was a testament to how the dismissal of one man's fevered dream, and the silence that followed, could change everything. The world, in this new timeline, was older, wiser, and far more diverse. And the ghost of Cristobal Colón, the man who had seen a new world but could not convince the old one of its existence, remained forever a footnote, his vision lost to the tides of history. This has been Timeline Shift. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the paths history could have taken.